Everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's a busy time of year. I know we've got lots of extracurriculars going on. Even though you guys lost terribly tonight for nothing at soccer, we're not going to talk about that. They were all excuses. Tonight's a really important night for our grade 11s, and there's a reason why we host this at this time of year. It's because you've got a few months before the shock of grade 12. And the pressure of having decisions made when you come back after the summer is going to hit. So it's really important that tonight we start to prepare you to start thinking about what do you still need to think about before we come back in September and October, and some really major decisions need to be made, not to scare you in any way. So tonight, Ms. Staniloff, for those of you who haven't met her, Amie Staniloff is our school counselor. She's going to give you all the information that you as parents and students need as you enter this next big year of your lives, so that next year's a really smooth year as we transition into post-secondary school. So without further ado, Amie will teach you everything you need to know.
Well, thank you guys all very much for coming. I apologize. I'm just trying to get a hold of this. So basically tonight there is tons of information that I'm going to be providing you all, and I want to do it in a short amount of time. But please feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation. Don't just hold them to the end, because there might be a lot of questions that come up, so that's okay. So tonight we are going to just talk about career and what that might look like, and what kind of jobs you as the grade 11s are thinking about that you want to do after you leave the school next year. We're also going to be talking about high school and the courses that you would be needing to get into these post-secondary schools, as well as university in general. So, from grade 1 to grade 12, I'm sure it's a very easy transition. There's not a lot of flexibility in one schedule. It's really secure. You know you're going from grade 4 to grade 5 to grade 6. You know what courses you're going to be taking. But then you hit the end of grade 12 when it's really unpredictable. There are many roads that you could be going on, and welcome. And there's tons of roads that you could be going on, many programs you could go into, and it can be really scary for all of you. But tonight, I'm hopefully going to ease some of that worry, and maybe we can start thinking about what you guys want to do. So we are going to just talk a little bit about what kind of jobs that you think that you may want to do down the road. So it's really important to know yourself and know what's important to you, what values do you hold, what motivates you, what are your interests and what are your dreams for the future. And it's okay at this moment if you're like, I have no idea what I want to do. That's pretty normal, and some of you may know exactly the kind of job you want to do, where you want to go after grade 12, and that's good too. But there are some resources, and the Alice website is actually a really good resource. It helps with, it talks about different jobs, that your income, the likelihood of getting employed after your post-secondary, where you can go for post-secondary, and it also has self-assessments, which if you were to do, it just asks you questions about what you're interested in, what kind of things you're interested in, and then at the end it pairs a bunch of jobs that would be a good fit for your interests. Along with that, I'm sure you guys as students know My Blueprint. So My Blueprint was brought into the school this year, and it's actually a really good, useful tool. There's a high school planner, which we will look at more in depth in a little bit, and we will also look at the occupation planner later on in the presentation. But it has so many resources for students to kind of explore what kind of jobs you want to do, what kind of courses have you been taking, and where will that lead you, into what schools you can get into. But if you are just at the point where you are still, I have no idea what I want to do, My Blueprint's actually a really good resource. So under the menu button at the very top on your left-hand side, it says, on the third one down, it says explorations. And then if students or yourselves want to kind of go through that, it will take you to this page. It's about 130 questions. There's no right or wrong answer. And it really just asks you about what you as students are interested in doing. At the very end, it actually gives you a huge list of different jobs that could match your interests. It gives you like lots of detail. It is probably the most useful tool that I have seen for as a self-assessment. And it's really good to use even if you just want to compare different jobs. So if you do that assessment and you have 3 that you're interested in, later on I can show you how you can compare that. So in summary of this, it's all about just knowing and getting to know who you are, what you want to do, and talk to everybody. Talk to your teachers, talk to your family, and just kind of get a sense of where you want to go down the road. It's really important that whatever you choose, it just makes you happy. And we, of course, want to be realistic in the courses, so we'll go through that in just a second. So right now we are going to just talk about high school and just about the graduation requirements. So the graduation requirements to get a diploma, it is very different than the requirements to get into any post-secondary institution. And so to get a diploma, every student needs to have English and social to the 30 level. They need to have math and science to the 20 level. They need to have PE 10, COM, which would have been taken in grade 10. And they need to have 10 credits of options, which you typically will do in grade 10. Then you need to have, on top of the English and social, and some students get a little bit confused about this, is that you need to have 2 other 30 level courses to be accounted for, as well as 100 credits in total. So this is the high school planner. This is in my Blueprint. So what if you, as a grade 10 student, you've had the opportunity, and grade 11, you've had the opportunity to fill this out and kind of pick a path of the courses that you wanted to take in high school. Hopefully you guys all have done that or will be doing that shortly. But it's actually really useful because at the Rutherford Scholarship, it will tell you how much money you can actually get towards the Rutherford Scholarship. It tells you how many credits short or on track you are for graduation. Once you have that green check mark, you have reached 100 credits. You've reached all the academic requirements to get a diploma. And then down below, from the courses that a student has taken throughout grade 10, 11, and 12, it tells you what programs you could get into. And so if you took all of those courses and you wanted to go to a college program, right now there's 4,629 options available for that student. So it's a very useful tool to use. So when a student is going to university, every program for university requires that you have English 30-1. Now, if you have, then basically you need to have English, and then you need 4 other courses in most programs. Some programs have specifics, for sure. But you cannot count Social 30-2 as an academic course. You can count Social 30-2 as a 5th course. So basically, when you're applying to any post-secondary school for a university, you're applying with 5 courses, unless it's engineering. Engineering requires they take your grade 11 sciences as well, and some of the math, depending on the school that you go to. But it's so important that you don't just take a English 30-1 just because you want to go to university. It is better to take a 30-2, have a strong mark, go a different path, go to a college, and then transfer, which we will talk about in a little bit, than just having English 30-1 and not having a strong mark. Typically, students who go into a diploma with below a 65 or below tend not to do well, and they don't open any doors for themselves for post-secondary. They're actually closing tons by not having that 30-2.
Comment about the math then as well.
Absolutely, yes.
So 30-2 is what you need.
So in some programs, lots of programs actually for arts, for example, you can have math 30-1 or 30-2. You need to have a math 30-1 if you are planning to go into sciences, into math of course, or engineering. Those ones are very specific. But a lot of programs, for example, nursing, will take a math 30-1 or a 30-2. So, yeah.
Nursing, though, you need a 3.9 to get in.
At what institution, sorry?
MRU and U of C.
Red College is one that you can get in that a lower. So there's a bit of, there's ways to get there on a different track.
They had, I think, 1,400.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a very competitive.
It absolutely is a very competitive. When I was just at an MRU update actually, and I think it was a 3.4 is what the nursing program was accepting in, which is definitely a very high average. Okay, yeah. And it's very high. And one thing it does is that they do fluctuate year to year, unfortunately. It depends on typically your applicant pool. How many students are applying for that program? What are the marks that they're applying with?
The other thing that, sorry, Amie, the My Blueprint, if you can switch back to the slide where they can, students can play around with their grade 12 year. So all of you have not completed grade 12. You can play around with what those potential courses will be. So adjust out ELA 30 for ELA 30-1, sorry, for 30-2, or adjust your math. And what you can see is how that impacts your eligibility pathway. And what you'll see is that you're never going to get 0 options when you start doing that. Definitely there'll be a change in your numbers, but what you have to see is that there's still lots of possibilities out there. And that sometimes you have to rethink your approach to give yourself the best opportunity to get into those programs of choice.
And so basically what will be happening in September is that I'm going to be meeting with every single grade 11 student, and I'm going to kind of talk about what they're thinking of, where do they want to apply, what kind of programs do they want to apply. I'm also not, of course, I'm going to go, I want them to apply early because early acceptance gives them a better chance of getting into any program. But I am going to go with the competitive averages for every program. So if you don't necessarily meet that average, that high academic average, there's other ways of getting into that program still. And so if you are thinking of going to a college, colleges actually will take English 30-2. They will take social 30-2. So that's a big one. They also, of course, for every program in a college, they will take math 30-2 as well. So what is happening is Alberta government has just switched over to this new system to access diploma marks. So for all the grade 11s right now who they've been spending some time with me signing up for what is called My Pass, and it allows them to access their diploma marks. It allows them to view their progress in getting their diploma. Currently, if a student is eventually applying to post-secondary institutions outside of Alberta, they need to submit their final transcripts at the end of the school year, and you do that through this website as well. So all students who are writing a diploma in June have started this process to get this account. All other students will be starting that process come September. And so typically when you are applying to schools, they're outside of Alberta, they're going to be asking for an unofficial transcript. This is typically what it will look like, and this is something that I submit on your behalf. So you would just have to come to me and ask for, I need a transcript to go to UBC and I will send that right away. I also send a letter indicating your in-progress grades as well as the courses that you will be taking the following semester. When you are applying to Alberta, and we'll be discussing this a little further, but you actually self-report grades, so they do not need to see any transcripts until their final marks. And so for diplomas, some institutions will take a blended mark, so they will take the actual course mark and the exam mark and put it together. Some institutions, for example, out east, will only take their school mark because they do not think it's fair that Alberta students have to write an extra exam. So it is something to be mindful of. Not all institutions will take that final mark from their diploma.
Is that true if the transcript is 2 separate marks?
Yes. So if you can see down below it, the third from the bottom, it says Chemistry 30. So it has their school mark, and then has the department mark, and then their overall mark. So if a school does not take a diploma mark, they will just look at that school mark. Also, if a student is ever retaking a diploma, it's really important to know that the school mark, like the class mark, and their highest diploma mark is put together. So it's always the highest out of the two. So it's really good to know that. Oops, I went the wrong way. And so now we are just going to be talking about universities. Are there any further questions along the way? No? Okay. And so how do you decide which program you want to go into? How do you decide what institution you want to go into? Because there's so many different paths to get to exactly where you want to be. So the first year of any program in any institution, it's very vague, and you're able to take a lot of variety of courses. They set it up that way so that you can have the opportunity to switch programs if you feel that the program you went into is not the right choice for you. 70% of first-year students in post-secondary change their major after their first year. So it is very high. It's very common. What's really important is if, for example, you are really interested in going to MRU for business, but you don't have that competitive average to get in, but you have that competitive average to get in to the arts program, it's about getting into the institution. That's what we would recommend, and then transferring, because the courses are so general. You wouldn't be a year behind if you think, and you have the same opportunity and be able to graduate just along with that other program. And so this is basically if you are going to get a certificate, that is a 1-year program, then of course the diploma is 2. In order to go you need to go from a diploma to a bachelor's. You can't just go from a diploma to a graduate degree, if that makes sense. So you just kind of have to follow that sequence. When picking schools, it is so important that you guys are picking schools that are interesting to you, that you enjoy the culture and the feeling of that school, as well as they have really good access to student services to support your learning needs.
So this afternoon we actually had for the grade 12s 4 alumni come back. So this afternoon was the grade 12s alumni day, which you too will get to experience. And we had those 4 alumni come and talk about the post-secondary school they attended, what the accommodations were like, how did they access those, how did they choose that post-secondary school, and we'll be making all of that available to all of our parents on Moodle. So that's going to be something I really encourage you once we post those to look at grade 11s, because a lot of the information they tell you about their post-secondary school may change how you make your decisions and what program to go to.
And so on My Blueprint, you're actually able to pick a a program that you want to go into, or a variety of programs, and compare them to each other. So this is just an example of someone picking 3 different degree programs and kind of comparing the requirements. If you notice though, English 30-1 is always there. It's across the board. That, again, that is standard. You need English 30-1 to get into a university. And then this is just an example of 3 diploma programs. And as you can see, English, it could be English 30-1 or 30-2. In some diploma programs, you don't even need English to the 30 level. You do need English to the 30 level to graduate high school. So there's a big difference. That's kind of the difference that you'll see. Some programs as well, not only you have to apply and have the grades, some programs you actually have to interview for as well. And then this is just an example of the trades. So here that you can see that you don't need, to get into the program, you don't need any of the 30 levels, but they're recommended down below. And so the important thing that you guys just need to know is that it is so important to apply early to any school that you would like to go to. Even if you're thinking about it and you're not sure, I suggest applying because you have a better chance of getting in. The online, what they actually say that the average is to get in is not the case in so many situations. That's why I go with the competitive average when I'm helping you guys next year, because for MRU they're saying that you need a 65, but in reality it was close to an 80% of students that you needed to get in. The business program, for example, at MRU this year, what they said is 65, and it was an 82%. So it is very different. So we say apply early because you have a better chance of getting accepted if you don't meet that high competitive average. There's if you are applying to post-secondary earlier, they have tended to have an early admission average, and then later on they have that general competitive average. That's the difference. So when you guys are applying to post-secondary schools, it is important that you know that if you wanted to go into business at one institution and business at another institution, the requirements don't necessarily match up. So it's important to really look in depth about what the requirements for each program are at each separate institution. So for example, how the calculations don't always match up is that, for example, at University of Calgary, for one of the programs, it's a 77.8%, but they take your grade 11 and grade 12 final marks. And you could be accepted with that. But at Mount Royal, you could have an 80.1, and they take the top 2 Group A, which is just your top 2 30-level academic courses. That's all that means. So, and you could still be denied. So it definitely does vary. So of course, there is direct entry into programs. You can go straight from Rundle to whichever institution and whichever program that you choose to go into. Of course, that's ideally for some, and it's not the case for all students. And some need to transfer, so they would attend one institution and then transfer the following year as well. So you can do that going from university to university. You can also do that from college to university. Some people who are really set on going to one specific school and they can't get into that program, they would transfer within that institution. So that's what I was talking about there. So I just wanted to pull it up, but this is very similar for every institution on their website. So this is just University of Calgary, but this is the requirements. So along the side, you will see the program, you will see the courses that are needed to get into that program, as well as some institutions on their websites will post that competitive average, some do not. what I will be doing is ensuring that I have all of that information for when you guys are applying next year. And so again, just to reiterate, applying early is way better than applying later. Early admission goes to about Christmas. So you can start applying for post-secondary schools in October. And that's when although I'm meeting with you guys in September, my hope is to get the ball running as soon as we can, as soon as they open, so we can get you guys started in this process. Also, please know that just because you get conditional acceptance and you have residence and you sign up for classes, but then something happens with your academics and you don't meet that requirement, they can take that away from you. So it's not set in stone until your final transcripts are submitted to that institution, whether that is in Alberta and they do it for you, or if that is through My Pass and you submit them. Yeah.
How much time do they give you before they take it? Like how much time between taking it and the end of school?
So they typically don't take it away until August. So because they wait for your final transcript to come in. You yourself will know ahead of time if you meet that requirement. When you get accepted, they will have a condition, and that's the condition that you need to follow. So if you're applying to a school in Alberta, you actually don't go to the website and just click apply. You go through what is called Apply Alberta. You make an account, and this is where you self-report your marks in this. I recommend being as detailed as possible through Apply Alberta because it will speed up the process for when Alberta schools are looking at your application. But Apply Alberta is the site that submits your final transcripts on your behalf. If you are applying to any school in Alberta, whether that's a college or a university or a trade school, this is where you would be going to apply. After you make an account, the application process takes about 5 to 7 minutes long. It's quite short, and it's very easy to navigate. But this is something that I will also be helping you guys with if need be. So once you decide what school you're hoping to go into, I really recommend touring that institution. Get a feel for it. If it seems too big for you, typically Rundle students do really well in smaller institutions because we're used to smaller class sizes and more individualized support. But I also recommend contacting the student services while you're on that tour. Find out what supports there are available to you if you were to go to that school. They're really accommodating and are willing to meet with you guys when you have your tours. And then here's just a list of questions that you should be asking when you're on these tours and you're speaking to the student services. And this will be provided for you guys. But it's a good way, a good handy thing to kind of compare as well. If you're touring a bunch of schools, what student services are better and what are better to meet your own individual needs. So scholarships, of course, there's tons out there. And next year, around March is when the deadlines for most of them are due. But there's tons out there. You don't only have to be academically strong to earn a scholarship. It could be on volunteering. There's tons out there. And so many go unclaimed every year. And so it's very important. As grade 11s, if you are even thinking possibly that you are wanting to go to the University of Lethbridge, they actually have a grade 11 scholarship. Of course, you would need to attend that school to obtain it, but it takes about 5-10 minutes to apply for this. There's not really any detailed information other than your Alberta student number that is needed, and you can win $500 just for having a 75 or above. And so I am going to go to my blueprint, and I'm just going to show you how you can use the occupation planner. So I apologize that I do need to just sign in quickly. So just under the occupation, whoops, I'm a little too high. On the occupation planner, and then if you were to click that, and then if you were to put in any occupation that you would like, I'm just going to put in social work. And then it does break it down for you, so you can kind of compare what area of social work, if that's what you want to do. It also looks at your learning styles. So if you're a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learner, and so if I was to go auditory, it would even shorten my list of different programs, different occupations that I could have. If I was to click, for example, addictions counseling, it gives you a really detailed overview. It tells you how much you could make average each year, the employment growth, the work environment, employees. Down below, it does have the job seeking versus job openings and projected ones for in the future. It does have a self-assessment, which is really good. So if you're thinking, I really want to be a social worker, but you do these assessments and your interests don't line up, then you know it might not be a really good fit for you. So it's something that you can look into. As well as it does have job postings in Canada and Alberta, that are available currently. If I was just to go back and I was to click addiction studies and I would say marriage counselor, for example, I can compare the two. And the same information is provided, but now it's just side by side. So you can really have a detailed look of different areas that are interested to you. So I really recommend just kind of exploring my blueprint. And so that is pretty much all the information that I have. I know it was a lot of information to take in, but please know that we're here to support in any way, and we want to make this transition as easy as possible. I know that there's going to be questions along the way, and some disappointment potentially if they don't get in right away to a program, and or if they go apply to a program and then in March decide that they don't want to go to that institution and apply to another program at a different institution, and then there's the waiting game, of course. So please know that we're here to support in any way. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer. No, not right now. Okay.
So all of the students have passwords and sign-ins for My Blueprint that they've had all year. So if you have, as parents, haven't had a chance to see how their high school planner looks, or even just to explore My Blueprint yourself, please don't hesitate to spend this evening sitting down over your computer and signing into My Blueprint. It's a really current resource that's updated constantly. You can see the current job postings and everything from the income to absolutely everything to do with that job is being updated at all times. So that resource is something that's brand new to our population this year, and the reason why we went ahead and went with it is because that tool is incredibly invaluable in terms of just having all of that information right there for the students. So particularly for those grade 11s who aren't totally sure what direction do they want to go in, well, just get on there and start searching around, and what you're going to fall upon is jobs you might not have ever even considered. So oftentimes we're just considering jobs that we know people around us have, and if we can't find a fit within those, we tend to be lost. So really taking the opportunity over the next couple months to explore what options there are out there, and also to be making some considerations with your own high school timetable. So if right now 20-1 math is just a disaster, then let's start planning for what next year is going to look like and what possibilities are still open to you regardless of how we adjust that planning schedule. Like Amie said, she'll be meeting with all of the grade 12s come the fall. The other thing you as parents and students should know is that we actually have university reps from across Canada that come and visit our school at lunchtime. So starting at the end of September, all through October, there's just about a different rep here every single lunch hour. And so we'll be helping to get students to attend those events, particularly when we know you're interested in a certain university. But students, we'd really encourage you to just show up to all of them, because you're going to find that even the representatives of the universities all have a different feel, and oftentimes you can even get a sense from them if that's a university you want to consider pursuing. It's a business. Universities are trying to sell you to come to their program. So oftentimes, for example, the Acadia rep this year came out and was giving flight vouchers for students that came to one of their sessions in the city later that week. And it's incredible what universities are doing. UBCO brings all their students out in the summertime to have a party with them on their campus, all in the attempt of bringing students to their school. So they want you to attend, and the power of being an academy graduate is you get to choose what post-secondary school you're going to. You're not limited. You have that choice available to you. So we really want you to take what you've worked so hard for and make the right choice for you. The other thing we'll be doing in September is this year we did 2 different campus visits with all of our grade 12s. We took them to U of C for an afternoon and St. Mary's College for an afternoon. And the reason wasn't to push local colleges or universities. The reason was we wanted you to understand that every institute has a very different feel. And those are 2 very, very different campuses we have in the city. And it was very clear to those students the different feel that was created from those 2 campuses. So, for example, at St. Mary's, we actually sat through 2 lectures, which were in classrooms the size of ours. And then when we toured around U of C, we walked into one of the largest lecture halls for most first-year students, and kind of allowed the students to see that there's a lot that goes into this conversation. So we understand that there's a lot that needs to be decided. We understand as parents that oftentimes you don't know where to even begin these conversations with your sons and daughters, or then how to start the application process. So please really lean on Amie throughout the process. We'll do as much as we can to keep the students organized and on top of deadlines and pursuing all these opportunities. But the more conversations you can have with each other and as a family in the meantime, the smoother it will be come October, when we are really flying with applications.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you finding that where it's very competitive?
Yes.
We know that you don't need 3 sciences to get into many of these programs.
No.
Most of our kids are being encouraged that you don't need to have that. But when it's that competitive, are kids that are getting the 3 sciences favored?
No, they are not. It is purely on the average. Sorry. For example, though, for engineering for U of C, one that I'm aware of right now is that for the maths, particularly, if you don't have the math 30-1, it was a 92.5% average to get it accepted into engineering. If you had the math 31, it was an 88. So in that sense, it's beneficial to have that extra course. But it's not necessarily for sciences. If you're applying to a science program, you definitely need the 2 sciences, though. Any other questions? No.
Do any of the universities consider you are coded with a learning disability? Do they ask for that, or
they do?
Consideration for that?
No consideration, but they do ask for it. And for example, the UBC application in UBCO, they actually do ask that in that process. But you're also allowed to have there's a written portion that accompanies that application, which is a deterrent for many students who don't want to put in that effort, but that's an opportunity to kind of share that information if you see fit.
to that. Our oldest son just started at MRU, and we really had to seek out the program. There is resources, there is accommodations that they give, and Alberta has a program also for students that need extra help, and they provide funding. So there is a lot of programs available, but a lot of them you have to go and dig them out. They're not handed out, so to say.
And unfortunately, that's why I recommend going on those tours and seeking out the student services to find out what supports they can actually put in place for each student.
The institutes our alumni spoke to, and you'll be able to see their experience with accommodations on the Moodle website next week, would be, we had 2 students from MRU today. We had the University of Guelph. We had UBC Okanagan as well as U of C. In addition to that, we'll have Acadia, U of L, and a SAFE representative. And I know I'm missing a couple more, but a bit of a spectrum. And you'll be able to see, as was addressed, that the accommodations our students are given are incredible. It's really remarkable. And so there's nothing to fear about your application process and what does it mean that I have this coding. And it's really powerful what you'll hear from our alumni, their experience in post-secondary.
Yes.
As far as assessments, recent assessments, our students need to have that done in order to qualify to get all of the accommodations?
So they do need to be within the last 5 years.
Some are 2.
Yes, some are 2.
Depending on what the coding was?
Depending on the institution.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. So some institutions require a more recent one.
Okay.
If that is something that is needed, I do have a list of that we can actually recommend to you also and send that out.
Typically as TAs, your TA starts when they're building the new IPP when we have grade 12 students. That's something we flag for you, is that this is the date of your last assessment. Most of you have been with us for quite a while, so your assessments are quite dated. So most of you are going to want to pursue an assessment. And Amie can guide you with the assessments that can be done if we need a quick turnaround, so if you wait till later in the year. But what I'd really encourage you to do is think about booking those in the fall, because this time of year, psychologists are incredibly busy trying to get through the students that, one, want to get into programs in September, just regular high school, junior high programs, as well as those trying to get their post-secondary ed psych reports up to date. So in the fall of your grade 12 year is a really ideal time. So even starting to schedule those now if you have a psychologist you already used and really enjoyed.
And it's also really important to hopefully submit, once you pick your institution, and hopefully that will be before May, and then by May, it's really important to submit that assessment to that institution so you have ample time to kind of figure out everything that is needed to support you as the students for the future, for the following September, sorry. So.